Have any of you ever met a flat earther? What I love about most flat earthers is that they need proof. I've watched a number of interviews of flat earthers, and they all say that evidence is simply not solid yet. But if they were presented with solid evidence, they would gladly change their minds. And as a result, flat earthers tend to be much more attuned to science than I am, honestly. I watched a video of one flat earther explain how a very legitimate scientific instrument worked, and how if this instrument put out one type of data, it would show the earth is flat, but if it put out another type of data, it would show the earth is round. The interview was taken before the person actually used the instrument and collected the data, so I'm unfortunately unsure how the experiment turned out. But there was an infinite flat earther, Mad Mike Hughes, who decided the best way to settle the debate once and for all was to build himself a rocket and launch himself into space. From a sufficiently high vantage point, it would be clear if the earth was flat or round. And so Hughes successfully launched himself 2,000 feet in the air, which is less than half a mile, but high enough to see if there's a curve to the horizon. Unfortunately, Hughes' parachutes failed to deploy, and he died upon landing, so we don't know what he saw. Still, I feel like tomorrow presents a particularly good moment to ask the question, is the earth flat or round? As you all know, tomorrow the moon passes directly in front of the sun, and for a moment in parts of North America, there will be a total solar eclipse. Now, of course, the moon and the sun prove nothing about the earth, but as millions look up at this near perfectly round object, blocking out a much larger but also near perfectly round object, one might ask a simple question. Do we also live on a near perfectly round body? Then one might continue to look at the night sky and notice that every body of sufficient size that they see in the sky is always near perfectly round. Then one might observe images of the earth taken by satellites and all the other scientific studies done throughout the world, and notice that all of them show, whether through visuals or data, that the earth is also near perfectly round. And there comes a point where, with all this overwhelming evidence, someone finally needs to proclaim, stop disbelieving and believe already. Our good friend Thomas was a flat earther. And I don't blame him. He wanted proof. Mary and the other women got to see Jesus. Peter and the other disciples got to see Jesus. And I'm sorry for stating the obvious, but just like how all my senses and experience show that the earth is clearly flat, the horizon is flat, the land as I drive across it is flat, none of the oceans are carbonated, it is obvious that when people die, they stay dead. Always. And if you're going to make some nonsensical claim like the earth is round and Christ is alive, I need proof. And Thomas gets proof. And in the face of proof, Jesus invites him, stop disbelieving and believe. Unfortunately, we're not Thomas or Peter or Mary. We're not even Paul, the one who was untimely born. We are among those who have not seen, as Jesus says. And some of us can make that leap of faith, who have not seen and yet have come to believe. But some of us ask, and not without reason, why can't we have some evidence like Thomas and all those other apostles got? If not direct evidence, we don't need to launch ourselves up to heaven. At least a tool by which we can detect the truth and have data to verify our claims. What can we point to as evidence of this miraculous claim? Maybe we can point to the same thing Jesus gives John as evidence. John asks his disciples, "Are you the Messiah, or are we to wait for another?" And Jesus replies, "Go and tell John what you hear and what you see. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the poor have good news brought to them. And blessed is anyone who takes no offense at me." This evidence, in fact, is the same evidence Jesus describes in Matthew 25 to prove that he's alive. "I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me. Truly, truly, I'm telling you, just as you did to one of the least of these who are members of my family, you did it to me." When you are helping people, you are helping me, Jesus says. I am alive in them. Though how many days have each of us gone without helping a single person? How do those days, when people do not receive good news, weigh on the evidence as we're considering it? Or maybe we can point to the love alive in the hearts of Christians. Jesus says, "Those who love me keep my word, and my Father will love them, and we will come to them and make our home with them." Again, Jesus says, "Abide in me as I abide in you. If you abide in me and my words abide in you, ask whatever it is you wish, and it will be done for you. My Father is glorified by this, that you bear much fruit and become my disciples. As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Abide in my love. And if you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his." Paul says, "I have been crucified with Christ, and it is no longer I who live, but it is Jesus Christ who lives in me. Just as we have been born in the image of the human of the dust, now we bear the image of the human of heaven." And the human of heaven was particularly known for compassion and love. Where love abounds in the Christian world, it ought to be evidence that Christ is alive. Although there are lots of times and places in the Christian world, even here at Mount Zion, where love does not abound. Unfortunately, even if I could give you irrefutable evidence, there are still those who won't believe. As Tim Allen said in The Santa Claus, "I see it, but I don't believe it." To which a wise elf replied, "Seeing isn't believing. Believing is seeing." But see, here's the important thing. When Thomas disbelieves, yelling at his friends, saying, "Unless I see, I will not believe," what does Jesus do in response? Does he chastise Thomas? Does he reject Thomas? Does he kick him out of the church? Does he judge Thomas? "For this affront, you are now the least of the apostles. You will be condemned to wash the feet of your fellow apostles' donkeys for the rest of your days." Does Jesus do any of that? No. Jesus shows up and says, "Peace be with you." And he turns to Thomas and in his actions says, "Welcome, my beloved friend. I am glad you're here." There are days when your belief will be strong and true and certain. You will have seen Jesus in the expressions of love and compassion, mercy and joy being shared in, by, through, around, and to you. And you will be able to proclaim with confidence, Christ is alive. There will probably also be days when you will be uncertain, when your faith will waver, when you encounter forms of Christianity that make you disbelieve or at least greatly doubt. There may be days and times in your life when you want to yell at God or spit on what Christianity has become. But you see, no matter where you are at, that doesn't change Christ's welcome for you. To those who believe, Jesus says, peace be with you. And to those whose faith has failed, Jesus says, peace be with you. And to those who are lost, Jesus says, peace be with you. To all of them, Jesus says, you are welcome here. Not because of the strength of your belief, but because of the strength of Christ's love. And that love will never fade. You are always, always, always welcome here. And though I cannot prove it, I will try to show you the evidence of Christ's resurrection every day through the love of Jesus alive in me. Something I hope each of us will do for all those we meet in our lives as well. And so from the bottom of my heart and the wellspring of life, I say to you, the peace of Christ be with you all, always. Amen.
Thank you for joining us. Be sure to like if you heard good news and subscribe to stay up to date on the latest message. Peace be with you.